This episode, I don't know how much you know about this episode in connection to the rest of the mythology, but for the first several years of the series, the first 5 or 6 seasons, this episode was considered the most divisive among all of the shows that they had put out because it's the first time where we lose a regular guest star who is on our side.
J.R. Bourne's character.
J.R. Bourne's character, Martouf.
Yeah.
This was a big deal. And when it aired, it was like dropping an M60 into the crowd of Stargate fandom. And Darren talks about this much more eloquently than I do over at Gate World because he watched the bifurcation in the poll that he put out every week go for 50% of the audience loving it and 50% of the audience hating it, and that never happened. It was extremely polarizing, which, as far as I am concerned, meant that it was a great show, and I am still divided on it to this day. It's a great episode, but did they have to kill him? I'm assuming none of that was present when you shot it. It was just another day. Or are you aware that at that time that JR was a regular and they were knocking him off?
I was aware. And I can remember just even looking at his expression and the conversations that he was having with one of the other players, that this was a big emotional event for him. There was a big disappointment there. But of course, I didn't really know the actors. I didn't know him, but I understood what it was like to have that sense of rejection and a loss of something that was obviously, a series of mammoth proportions. And so I felt for him, in terms of what he was going through on the day. But like you said, this was my first day on set, and we deal with a lot of things in this business, and we just have to roll with it, whatever it is that occurs. Obviously the title for the episode is rather fitting, divide and conquer. Whether do you think in hindsight they made the right decision okay.
In war, people die a lot.
Yeah. J.R. Bourne went on to have a wonderful career, and he explored many different characters and stories. And so, sometimes when things like this happen, we look back on it and think, no, that maybe there was a silver lining in there.
For sure.
And he just continued to grow and evolve, which is wonderful.
And in science fiction, no one has ever truly gone. There was a two-parter written the following season that would have featured him pretty heavily, and he was unavailable.
Right.
So, it's maybe it was fitting in this case because, there's actors. It's feast or famine, like you were saying. Some multiple jobs a week, and then other weeks nothing. And it's like you've got to grab what you can while you can. It's like you have one trip through the buffet line, and you might as well pile everything you can onto that plate while you got it.
Yeah.
So, tell me about the council robes. Were they heavy? They look heavy. And how much did they inform the character and your poise and your performance?
You sent me the episodes as a refresher, and I really appreciate that. And I remember watching it thinking that I was a certain regalness to the way that I moved. And I definitely will have to attribute part of that to the costume. The length of it, you're right. I remember feeling a weight on the shoulders, but because I'd worked at Stratford and wore period costumes, I'd had that experience, and so I wanted to move accordingly. They even padded my shoulders, which surprised me because I'm fairly broad-shouldered. And in fact, I think there might have even been lifts in the boots because, you just got to make me even taller. So I felt very, very imposing, but I also wanted to take on what the character represented, which was this dignitary. He wasn't, just like the head of the Tok'ra. He's the chancellor. He's high, and it was originally written for an actor in his 50s, and I was in my 30s. So I needed to bring that sense of weight. And I've mentioned this before, but when I went into audition, I decided to play the character like a character I'd played at the Stratford Festival in Julius Caesar, which is Octavius Caesar, who was a man in his 20s, but he was an administrative genius. So he was, he had a certain posture of someone who could take command even at a very young age.
There's some people who are just born with it, and so it's you can see those folks throughout history. I mean, Alexander the Great, and it's not exclusively people who have life experience who can make those decisions in a time of great importance and move forward. It's certainly an asset, but it doesn't always happen that way.
Right.
How aware were you through the material and through notes beforehand of who the Tok'ra were? Or was it just a lot of it intuited on the day in the performances about the war that they had been fighting for thousands of years single-handedly against a hugely impressive force?
A lot of that had to be intuitive on the day. I mean, obviously I read the script, but there was a lot about the show that I didn't know.
Yep.
Which is one of the tricky things about television, because in many cases you audition quickly. Can you deliver on the day in the audition? And that's what they want you to bring to the table. There just isn't necessarily the time to sit down and go through and explore, all the history with your character like you do sometimes with theater or sometimes with the bigger, film productions where they maybe work ahead of time for a period of months even in order for an actor to really ground themselves in who the character is.
Do you feel more at home in environments where you can really slowly take in the role, or do you like the fast pace of episodic TV more? I'm curious as to where you feel the most comfortable. I know a lot of actors who thrive under pressure.
Right. I feel I do generally well under pressure.
Yeah.
But my preference would be to ground myself more in terms of what it is that I'm portraying. So much of it becomes organic. You don't want to think about it. You want to just want to be there, be present. So I'm going to give you an example. I did an independent short film playing an Irish badass in this movie, and we rehearsed. We sat down and we rehearsed. And anyway, I had footage from this independent that wasn't shot particularly well in comparison to other projects. And I took my demo down to Los Angeles, and they looked at it and they said, "Why did you deliver such a strong performance in something that's not of the caliber of some of these other things?" And I said, "Because we rehearsed." That's it. We rehearsed. And the director, who was an actor, he actually took us into the environment where we were going to be filming so that we had a sense of what that space was like. So many times you get an idea in your head, okay, this is what it's going to be like. And then you get to set and it looks nothing like what you expect. And that can really throw an actor, or what's being delivered to you from another character is very opposite on different levels. It could be the energy, it could be the emotion, or even just something about them physically that is not at all what you read in the script. So there's so much adjustment that has to take place, on the day when you arrive. And it isn't like, oh, I'm going to rehearse. I'm going to film. And you've got to deliver.
Wow.
So, thank God for something called technique that you develop over a period of years, right? So you learn to sort of cope with those situations, but it's just not always the best environment for you to deliver the best you're capable of.
I'd never thought about it that way, where the environment can be that critical in exposing you to certain facets of the character that you can access that you wouldn't have had you not seen the space.
And sometimes it inspires you. It does the opposite. You walk in, you're like, whoa, this is great. I hadn't thought of that, but I'm actually really, I'm appreciating this. This is informing me of what it is that I need to do for this character.
But do you have time to play to find it? Or do you kind of, close your eyes and pray that I'm going to go make this approach with this environment and let's hope it works the first time? Because sometimes you have to figure it out. Yeah, it's fast.
Actors are going around with their scripts. They're still in hand or their sides, their little copies. And as you get older, of course, you can't see the print because it's so small. And oftentimes you're in that environment and you've memorized your lines, but because you get all these things thrown at you, suddenly your brain goes. So you're then, of course, trying to ground yourself in your lines, remember them. And then you do a rehearsal and it's like, okay, let's shoot. That's the norm in television. So you get the master, then you're going to go for medium shots, and then you go in for the close-ups, and you're hoping certainly by the time it's your close-up, either they haven't shot a tons of shots, so that now you're tired, you're exhausted, or it's still fresh. So you have to map it all out in your head, and then just jump in the ocean and hope that you don't get eaten by something you didn't foresee underneath the water.
Thanks for watching this clip from Dial the Gate. You can find the full live stream shows on our YouTube channel or visit dialthegate.com for the complete schedule. See you on the other side.